all here today. Today we're going to be talking about what you need to know for college admissions, and we're going to cover the gamut from test prep to the financial aid to how to save and what the key steps are that you need to do along the way. I am a college admissions advisor. My company is Square Peg, Square Hole. And I'm just going to ask everybody who's participating to go around. If you are watching us, if you could just make sure you're on mute and that your video is off at this time. And Vicki, I'm going to let you start.
Hi, I'm Vicki Vollweiler. I'm the founder of College Financial Prep, and I help parents save money on the cost of college. That's done through financial aid, it's through scholarships, knowing when or how much to take out in student loans. It's also about making sure you're applying to the right schools to maximize your savings, strategizing and knowing ahead of time. And there are all different steps that we'll go through as to how to be able to save money on the cost of college.
Christopher, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christopher Ferrara with Main Street Financial Group, and we are a full-service wealth management firm located in Kings Park. One of our big areas of focus is to help our clients save for college. So we'll talk through some of the different places to save. What are the best areas to be putting your funds, and some of the the positives and negatives of putting them in different places.
Thanks. And Laurence and Patrick, you are a combo team for us. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves as well.
My name is Laurence Mechanic. I'm an English teacher and one half of Precision Test Prep.
I'm Patrick Echausse. I'm a 33-year math teacher and also co-founder with Laurence of Precision Test Prep. And we specialize in just trying to pick the right exam for your child and trying to give parents the adequate amount of time to really do a good job in terms of prepping for whether it's the SAT or the ACT.
Right. So thanks. So I'll get started. I'm just going to lay out a timeline for you, everybody, so you start to understand what are the different pieces that need to be done and when. There are a lot of steps, and honestly, you could start as early as soon as you know you're pregnant, getting started on all this. Right? That's where Chris kind of falls into this in terms of it's never too early to start saving. That's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to let him take the rest of it that's there. Typically, we start with the whole college admissions piece no earlier than freshman year. It's really starting to think about, from my standpoint, although one of my peers just got a phone call from a gentleman the other day asking for help. She had a 3-year-old that he wanted to get started. I'm like, that's probably a little early to start thinking about this.
Can I jump in about that? So in my work, I deal with a lot of divorced parents. And there are times when parents are getting divorced and the kids aren't yet in college and they could be much younger. So I do work with those parents to help them think about what their needs are going to be for college and college expenses, and what should be, thought about or considered for those divorce agreements. So yeah, it could come up much earlier.
Okay, I'm going to say that's on the money side. In terms of the rest of it, not so much. Really a great time to start thinking about college, though, is freshman year of high school. It's a great time for the kids to explore, right? Check out everything, go to the club fair, see what's interesting, right? You don't really know what you like until you're out there and checking everything out. A lot of times kids get really narrow focus. They are looking at what their older siblings are doing or what their friends are doing. And just because your friend likes it or your sibling likes it doesn't mean you will, right? So it's really important to start exploring your interests. There's not a lot that you can do in terms of a class schedule. It's fairly well set freshman year. There's a little bit of play. But now's the time to really start exploring, I'll say, more on the extracurricular side. Get involved with some community outreach, do some volunteer work, just really be open to trying something new, because this is a great time to do it. In the spring of freshman year, you're going to start thinking about your sophomore year classes. The key thing here is to take the most rigorous classes that work for you. Now, for some kids, that might be AP classes. For others, that's honors. For others, it's Regents classes. You have to do what works for your child, right? So we want to push them and challenge them, but we're not looking to stress them out and make them crazy. Right. So there's this fine line, and it's really important to talk to your guidance counselor to understand what's out there in your school, because every school has different opportunities. Some offer APs, some offer IBs. So find the program that fits them. As they get into sophomore year, you're going to continue to expand in terms of the kind of activities that you're working on and that you like to do, but you also want to start delving in. So if you're a performing artist, maybe you want to try out for an elite group. If you're an athlete, to start looking for ways to show your coach your leadership abilities, right, both on and off the field. You might want to start doing, if you're not already, working on those travel teams, really starting to prep for the tournaments and all the different places where they'll be scouting for you, because it still happens that the college coaches are looking, sophomore, junior year. I know as early as freshman years, some kids who are really good are getting looked at. That being said, athletic scholarships are not necessarily the way to go. So we'll get back to that, right? There's some money there, but not everybody's going to get money for athletics just because you like to play. But if academics are your space, you want to find a club that lets you show that off, right? Maybe you want to join Math Leads or Science Bowl, English Honor Society. You want to write for the school newspaper, right? Start delving into the things that you really like. Some schools, if you're in accelerated math, will let you take the PSAT as a sophomore, and you should, right? Get some experience with that. You're also going to plan your junior year in terms of your schedule. So again, you really want to focus on rigorous and start looking for classes that are of interest to you, right? So if you're creative and you want to take photography, go for it, right? Try and find a way to make that happen. If you love your languages, continue on. You also want to take a practice SAT and ACT to see what's a better fit for you, right? The guys are going to talk more about that. I'm going to let that be at the moment. Junior year is a crazy time, right? And we all know that. You're really focused on your academics. You're looking for leadership opportunities. Everybody now has the opportunity to take the PSAT, right? And junior year is the year that if you do really well, you have the potential for scholarships from that. You're going to take the SAT or the ACT at this point. It's also a good time to start visiting colleges, right? And if possible, you want to look at colleges while kids are on campus. It's okay if you have to go during the summer. Sometimes that's just the way it is, but you really want to get a good vibe for the school. And if you can't travel far, and these days it can be a little difficult, visit local schools, right? So if you're based on Long Island, you've got so many schools here that will give you a good sample of what it's like at many of the schools. You're not going to get a Big Ten school, but you can go up to UConn and see that, or you can ride out to Penn State, that's not that far, but visit the schools around here, at least to get a feel for what you like. Eat in the dining hall, ask people questions when you're there, look all around, right? Bulletin boards, sidewalks, they give you a great feel of what campus will be like there. You want to build your relationships with your teachers because you're going to be asking them for letters of recommendation at the end of junior year. And I know that was hard this year, but next year, hopefully, God willing, we'll be back in person. You'll be able to do that again. You can be asking teachers, you can be asking coaches, club advisors, community service folks, your employers for recommendation letters, right? Because schools want to know not just that you had a rigorous academics, not just that you did well, not just that you had activities, but they want the letters of recommendation to get a rounder picture of who you are. You'll be planning your senior year schedule in your springtime, right? And you want to make sure that you're looking at the majors you're interested in, so you're taking the right classes, right? That's a big thing right now. I've got a lot of kids saying to me, should I take AP Calc or AP Statistics? Well, if you're going STEM, you go in Calc, right? If you're going for, some of the liberal arts, you might be able to do statistics, but you need to make sure that the classes you're taking are the ones that you need for college. Don't give up on your sciences, your languages, right? You really want to make sure you're following through all the way. Senior year, you're finally almost there, but now's the time where you have all the work to do in terms of the application. So the summer before, you are finalizing your college list. You are writing your personal statement. You're starting all your applications. Chances are really good you're going to use the Common App because most schools are on that, or that the kids around here apply to, but there's the Coalition app that some schools still use. If you're applying in California, you have the California apps, and some schools like Georgetown and Townsend still have their own. If you're an art student, performing art, visual art, you want to create your portfolio. If you're a business student, you want to create your resume. In the fall, you may end up taking the ACT or the SAT again. Hopefully not, but you never know. You'll be writing all your supplemental essays and finally hitting submit. You'll be sending in test scores. You'll be filling out all the financial aid forms, which Vicki will talk all about. And the most important thing is that you don't give in to senioritis, because it's really easy to be like, "Oh, I'm done. I hit submit. Everything's taken care of." Colleges can revoke decisions, just a little FYI, right? So you don't want to do that. You want to keep up with your grades. They want to see your midterm reports, right? So they're looking at all that information to see, are you going to be able to stay firm and do what you need to? Because that talks a lot about your character. If you apply early, whether it's early action, which is non-binding, early decision, which is binding, you need to make sure you have the money and you really want to go to that school. If you do that, you'll be finding out end of December, January, if you got in for most schools. If you apply regular action, regular decision, you'll be finding out by April 1st. Decision date is May 1st. So come April, you'll be picking the school that you want to go to. You'll be sending a deposit. May 1st, you'll be wearing that t-shirt and hopefully being really happy. So that's my piece of the puzzle. I'm going to let Laurence and Patrick talk about the SAT and ACT prep part.
And let me just say this, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat box. So that way we can discuss it as your question comes up.
Yes, I think that the way you ended it is so perfect. You're in the school, right? We did it. The best way to figure out the time to take the SAT or the ACT is to work backwards and to take a look at different things like the math that you've taken so far. I know Patrick will talk about that. When the student is ready, that's when the student should take the test. There's a lot of pressure from other families and friends. Oh, we're going to take it early. We're going to take it now. My advice is always to resist that and take the test when the student is ready. That's the number one thing that I think people have to remember. Now, I'd say historically, we'd say 8 to 12 weeks was a really good amount of time to prep. Okay, that's enough time to learn the curriculum, get a good feel for it, take a lot of practice tests, and take the test. After that, you definitely would want to take either test again. There's an art to learning the curriculum, and then an art to learning how to take the test under pressure. And we are dealing with kids, and we are dealing with immense pressure. And it's really hard to put everything together sometimes that first time. Experience is really important with this. Now, I'll talk about the English side of both tests. Patrick will talk about the math, and then we can kind of fill in the blanks as we go. The SAT is a test that, in my opinion, is more analytical and logical. And so there's a lot more time that's built in. So on the English side, there is a reading, which is 65 minutes and 52 questions. So it's approximately 13 minutes per passage, and a writing and language section, which is essentially grammar mixed with logic. And that is 44 questions in 35 minutes. The ACT is more about speed. Okay, the questions I would say are a little simpler than on the SAT, but there's so much less time. And because there's so much less time, you can say that the test is just as difficult. So on the English portion, which is essentially the writing and language equivalent, there's 75 questions in 45 minutes. Okay, so it's definitely more questions, less time. There would then be the math section and then a reading section. And the reading section is now 35 minutes for 40 questions. So you'll see there's a big disparity in the time between the SAT, which is 65 minutes for 52 questions, and the ACT, which is 35 minutes for 40 questions. The science section is not really science. There could be a couple of things that our students would know just from being in science class. For instance, it might be something about like amino acids that all the students would most likely remember. Aside from that, it's a reading comprehension test, pretending to be this science experiment. So kind of picture like made up science stuff. So you don't need a science teacher. You don't need anything like that. You just need to learn the skills to take the test. Foundationally, you want to have the skills within grammar and reading comprehension. You want to have vocabulary. You want to have the understanding of the logic of test taking. That's sometimes really hard for students to embrace. they don't know what D means, but they know A is wrong, B is wrong, and C is wrong. Well, the answer has to be D, but most students would then say, well, I don't know what D is, but I know what C means, so I'll pick C. They don't necessarily realize that the test is testing them on logic. So those are some of the things that we work with the kids to help them kind of learn how to master. Patrick's going to talk about the math side of both tests, and then we'll kind of bring it back together.
Thank you, Lawrence. The first thing in terms of the math portion of the SAT that you may not know about is, first off, there's 58 questions on the math portion. It's broken up into two sections. There's a non-calculator section with the kids have 25 minutes to answer 20 questions, and that averages out to 75 seconds per question. You want to take note about the speed. The SAT definitely is more forgiving in terms of time compared to the ACT. So I'm going to speak to that. The calculator section, which is the second section of the SAT, there's 38 questions in that part when the kids have 55 minutes to do that. So they have a little over a minute and a half per question on the calculator section. So the SAT is definitely, like I stated earlier, much more forgiving with time. It is also on a more narrow focus in relation to math topics. We've broken it down to about 16 units that the kids need to be really proficient in. And even within those 16 units, some are weighted more heavily than others. So linear equations and systems of equations show up a heck of a lot more than, let's say, imaginary numbers and trigonometry, which is all taught to the kids, but we definitely spend more time on areas that are weighted more so that the kids have a better feel for what they can expect. I definitely want to talk a little bit about COVID, because I don't want to insult any of your kids' performances over the past year and a half, but it is beyond obvious that the kids have obviously been learning under the most bizarre circumstances. And I can only speak to what's going on in my own school district, which I thought we did a really good job under these circumstances. But we found that there were some shenanigans going on with certain kids, especially if you were a remote learner. And I tell you that because this is where, this year, junior year, this is where it's all got to come together. And those basic math skills from algebra and geometry, which could be skewed for some of your children. They could be. I don't want to accuse anybody of, rampant cheating, but I know that many of the remote kids, and it's been pretty widely known that there was, some things that happen that's really going to hurt the kids when they try to take an SAT. You can't fake this. You have to know all the topics. So I tell you what happened with the COVID piece, because Lawrence said 8 to 12 weeks. I would tell you, because of COVID and the skew, I would maybe devote 1.5 times that amount. I would probably go 12 to 16 weeks to make sure that every topic that's on that SAT is covered and that it is practiced thoroughly, because many of us assume that the kids are at a certain skill level, but with the COVID piece, it really has kind of thrown some things off. So I would recommend also, in terms of when you take the SAT, I would take it later in the school year. That might be well, of course, it depends on what math class you're taking. But if you are an Algebra 2 student this fall, I would really wait until May and June to take those exams. And if you do not get the score that you hope to get, I really do recommend taking this summer and just really refocusing your time and energy on doing the best you can. Because I know that when I went to college, whenever I took a summer class, if it was the only class you had, I always got an A, because I wasn't being distracted and pulled away by so many, different things. So please keep the COVID piece in the back of your mind, and then try to allow a little more time for prep, because that's what I've noticed over the past year. Now, in terms of the ACT covers a wider amount of math topics. There's 60 questions in 60 minutes. It really is a speed test. So one thing that I do like about the ACT is that I could tell you right now, out of 60 questions, there is a guaranteed 30 to 35 topics that are on every ACT. So if your kids can learn those 30 to 35 topics, pretty quickly, and they know that that's coming, that makes their life a little bit, easier in terms of getting ready. If you do have a child that has issues with time, I would not recommend the ACT. One other thing about the ACT is the math piece of it in terms of the overall score is a small percentage. It's 25% of the overall ACT. So if math is maybe a topic that your kids maybe struggle with, you may want to think that way as well, because it will not be held as much against them in terms of their overall ACT score. So SAT, more narrow, more time. ACT, a little bit broader in terms of what the kids need to know. However, a given of 30 to 35 things that are on every ACT, but please keep in mind shorter amount of time. Okay.
And
All right.
I'm going to just touch on one thing. Test prep is really important to give the kids a chance to practice, understand, right? You don't want anybody walking in cold, right? It really does boost their confidence, because a lot of it's about self-esteem and feeling comfortable with it. They gain a lot of knowledge in school, but the comfort that you get from the prep is really important. One thing that I get the questions a lot of times is, well, I heard that colleges don't want the tests anymore. What are we doing, right? So test optional is out there. It's in greater numbers this year than ever before. A lot more schools went test optional. If you're looking to find out which ones, check out fairtest.org. But I will say this, just because a school is test optional doesn't mean they don't want the test. And if you have a good score, you want to send them. Vicki's going to talk a lot about that in terms of the money side. I will say that in terms of my side. I have kids who might have scored 1,100 on the SAT and like, oh, should I, shouldn't I? At some places, we will still be sending that, right? Because I'm looking for the schools that are the right fit. 1,300, I'm going to send to a lot of schools. I'm not going to send to all the schools, but we decide school by school what makes sense to do, right? So if you have the opportunity, you want to take them. There are very few schools that are test blind, which means even if you send it, it doesn't matter. The University of California system is like that. They don't care if you have them. I had somebody with a 1540. They're like, all right, can't see it, doesn't matter, right? So 1540 out of 1,600, that girl worked really hard for that. And it didn't matter at that school. There's very few schools like that, right? Every place else, that was a real bump to her application. So my thoughts on that. We're going to switch gears a little bit and go over to the financial side. Christopher, you are up.
Hey, everybody. So my side of the equation, really what as relates to college, is really to help clients to save. This is something that you really can't start, like Eleanora said earlier, when you're pregnant. That's what I did for, all my kids, my nieces, my nephews. Starting on some type of a program where, you're just devoting a certain amount of money to this every year. College is expensive. I'm sure a lot of you on the call, know that. And it's something that's going to require a substantial amount of assets to devote to it. Certainly you have the loan route. But, at the end of the day, I think, parents want to put as much money to help their child out as much as possible, so they're not, leaving the college world with this, enormous debt that they, maybe you're, gonna have more stress finding a job. So, we work closely with clients to help them to start to save early, encourage them maybe at the holidays or birthdays to, maybe buy the child a small toy, but then take maybe the rest of the money and stick it in their college account. These are things that I did for my kids, but I think the biggest piece of it is to establish some kind of a monthly automated savings plan. It could be anything like $25, $50, whatever that might be, and it just consistently adding to it. And over the course of time, it really, really does well. There's a few different avenues to go in terms of saving for college. You know, the big one we recommend, which is probably the most popular, is the 529 account. They have them based in multiple states, so we'll work with, you know, whatever state makes the most sense for the client in terms of their residence. Up to a $10,000 contribution, there is a state tax deduction for those states that you are paying state tax. Those dollars go in there very much like a 401k process, where, you know, you're in a plan, you've got a portfolio of different types of mutual funds, managed type accounts, or ETFs, which are exchange traded funds. Those funds grow tax deferred, which is really nice. And then the beauty of that account is, again, another pitch for starting early. Any dollars you use for qualified education expenses will come out tax free. So think of starting an account for a child, you know, 0, 1, 2, 5. Let that money grow for, you know, 12 to 15 years, and all of a sudden you've got this taxable event, you know, pretty substantial gain that, you know, you don't have to pay taxes on. So that's a real big pitch for the, you know, for the 529 account. You know, so those are some things that we, you know, that we're recommending for our clients. But really the biggest piece, you know, if you take anything away from, you know, from my side of this presentation, it's really to start early, be aggressive with it, and you know, just get yourself on something of an automated plan that's going to get that money rolling in there, you know, on a monthly basis. These plans can also be used for high school expenses, really any type of a qualified educational institution. What I tell clients is, you know, keep some kind of a file, you know, per year. You know, if the bill was, you know, $5,330.20, that's what you take from your 529 account. And if you start to match up the dollars and the cents of it, it really makes it simple. And, you know, in the you know, the rare occasion that you might get audited, you know, you'll have all your documentation showing where the money went, and you know, put yourself in a you know, pretty advantageous position. So that's pretty much my end of it. That's really all I have. Again, we'll, as all of us will, you know, we'll take some questions if I'll send it back to Eleanor now.
Yeah. And I will say, Chris's advice on the match it up exactly was really critical. I got audited twice. So, you know, I must just have had the luck of the draw, but I had everything to prove it. Everything matched exactly. So no issues with that. So that was really helpful advice. All right, Vicki, so how do I actually save some money when I go to college?
Well, when your clients are working with, here, let me say this. So Chris helps you save money on the cost of college, and I help you wait, let me say this. Chris helps you save money for college. I help you save money on the cost of college. So one of the first things, say you're working with Eleanora and she's put together a nice list of schools for you, then we should talk and see if those schools are a good financial fit as well. It's important, saving money on the cost of college starts with the schools that you apply to. So it's very, very important to make sure that the schools that you're applying to are the ones that are likely to offer either merit scholarships or need-based aid. And every school has their own different formula. Each school has their own formula. Every family has their own financial circumstances. You can have two neighbors and two children applying to the same schools, and their grades could be vastly different or have different extracurriculars or whatnot. And it's very possible for two households to get very, very different offers from the same school. So it's important to look into that even before submitting the applications. From there, come October 1st of senior year is when the financial aid applications come out. And that's typically the FAFSA form, the CSS profile. Some of the schools have their own institutional forms. And a lot of people think, well, you know, my family earns too much money. Should we even bother to fill out a FAFSA form? And I always tell everybody yes. And there are a number of reasons for that. First, while it seems a little counterintuitive, some of the schools want to have the FAFSA form on file, even to award merit scholarships. So, even if you're just getting $1,000 or $2,000 a year, yeah, fill out the FAFSA form. It's important. Also, if you're going to be needing student loans, the students, freshmen are entitled to student loans of up to $5,500. That's totally in their own name, doesn't require a cosigner, and it has the lowest interest rate. So because of that, you definitely want to fill out the FAFSA form to be entitled to receive that student loan. Also, if your family might qualify for need and your child is interested in work study, again, you have to fill out the FAFSA form. And last main reason, I like to equate FAFSA to almost like an insurance product. Just in case, I mean, I hope this never happens to anyone. There's, a horrific situation in your family, whether it's, a medical illness, a loss of a parent, whatever it is. And there's a huge change in the family's financial situation. If you have the FAFSA form already on file, it's possible that the school will help you adjust your college costs in real time, as opposed to having to wait an extra year. So it's really important to fill out that FAFSA form. Another thing that I do with clients, we're planning strategically based on the family's goals, the family's values, the family's, finances, what the child wants to, what type of school the child might want to go to. So we're going to be looking for what schools require one type of financial aid form, what schools may require both. Different situations, you may benefit going one route versus the other. And again, that's part of the selecting schools and making sure you're applying to the right schools. In general, the FAFSA form does not look at the value of your home or your retirement accounts, whereas the CSS profile does. That's the general difference. The CSS profile is much more involved, much more in depth. And it doesn't always hurt a family. It could actually help a family depending on their circumstances. So shouldn't necessarily be scared of it, but there may be instances, for instance, some schools, say in the case of divorce, some schools will require both parents to submit their financial information. Are both parents willing to do that? Is it in the family's best interest to do that? So lots of ways to plan strategically when preparing for college. After the financial applications are submitted, then the children will start to receive their acceptances, and then they'll start to receive their financial aid awards. You're going to analyze those awards because there may be even more free money there to be had. I can tell you a quick story and you'll see how it relates. So last July 1st, my true story, the boiler in my home went. I had water all over my basement. It was awful. Anyway, I managed to get 2 people here. This happened New Year's Eve. So on July 1st, I managed to get 2 people here. One guy gave me a quote of one thing. Next guy gave me another quote, which was less expensive, but it was better for a number of reasons. Anyway, I called the first guy and the first guy said, "Oh, well, can I give you a lower price?" You know what? Just like college, everything is negotiable. College too. So, keep that in mind. You don't have to accept the first offer. So that's one of the things. We're going to be looking at other schools, seeing who's offering what and what else can be done. And then also you want to think about your personal situation. Has there been any recent impacts to your family's finances? For this year's students that are graduating now, going to school in fall 21, we used the family's 2019 tax returns. Now, between 2019 and 2021, how much has happened in the recent past? There could have been, huge layoffs. There could have been, illness, a whole host of factors could have happened to the family where their 2019 tax returns do not reflect what's happening in the family now. And that's a big area in terms of savings. I'm hugely serious when I say this. I've had a couple of families that have saved literally 6 figures on the cost of college. most families, you know, that have these major changes will save, you know, I've worked with families to save 5 figures, you know, I mean, it is possible. It's just, you know, planning accordingly and knowing what needs to happen. As far as student loans go, after the family's decided on a school, it's also important to know where to look for the loans and how to make sure that you're choosing the lowest cost loans to move forward. And it's important for the family to become, you know, informed so that way they can make the best decisions, you know, both for themselves and their children, because really this could impact, if the parents need to take out parent plus loans, you know, it could impact their future retirement. It could impact the students and, you know, someday getting married, purchasing a house. It's, you know, college is too big of a deal. So, you know.
And just to follow up on that, I will say this, to Vicki's point, that no matter what you think your financial situation is, it's really important to file the forms. I had a student this year whose parents like, we can pay the whole thing, it will be fine. It's a nice space for them to be in. That girl still got a lot of money at one of those schools because they really wanted her. So she got into an honors program and she got a ton of merit aid. She's going on to grad school, right? So what I always tell my kids, even though your parents might be able to pay all that money, wouldn't it be nice if they didn't have to? Right?
Definitely.
So there's a lot to be said for my own retirement as well. Right. So, and if you need grad school, and many times these days, whether you need an MBA, you're going for med school, if you're going for psychology, you know, so many of these programs, grad school is around the corner, right? And the name that matters a lot of times is where you went to grad school, right? So it's what you do in college. It's just like high school. You can go anywhere for high school and still end up at a great college. You can go anywhere pretty much for college and still end up in a great grad school if you work hard, you get the grades, you take the right classes, and you're engaged, right? So you never want to give up those opportunities to save a little bit, as it's a good thing. You want to start early prepping on the financial side so that you do have the best options available, right? It always makes it easier when there's money to be able to send your kids wherever they need to go. Putting the time into the prep for all their tests so that they can score well and do well, right? So there are all these different steps that are involved in making sure that your kid ends up at the school, which is the best academic, social, emotional, and financial fit. And that's what we're looking to do, is help you ensure that that happens for your student. Because at the end of the day, the school you're most engaged at is the one you're going to be the happiest at and do the best at. And for some kids, the range is huge, right? Of what those places could be. You can be really happy at the school down the block, and you could be really happy at Harvard, and you could be miserable at Harvard or at the school down the block, right? What works for somebody else, even if it's your sibling, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And so it's really important. You know, my tagline is find the right fit for a reason, right? And that's what we're all here for, to help. So at this point, I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask any of the 5 of us, whether it be about test prep or saving money or financial aid or what the steps are that you need to do for college, we're all here and willing to ask. You can put them right into the chat, or if you want, you can actually unmute yourself and you can ask us the question.